Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Shri R.M. Jain Group of Schools welcome you to our online learning initiative. Class 12 Economics. The topic is employment. It is all about growth, informalization, and other issues. Who are workers? Let us first know who belong to the group workers. People who engage themselves in some productive economic activity are called workers. So this productive economic activity is nothing but they contribute to the national income. So as they do some work, productive work, it means they are involved in production of goods and services. So production of goods, it means goods from a factory. Services is nothing but service of a teacher, service of a doctor, or service of a lawyer. So all these people are called as workers as they are involved in some productive economic activity. So as there is production of goods and services, it means there is flow of income. And so this contributes to the national income of the economy. This contributes to the national income and the gross domestic product. So the excess of goods, now these goods are produced in the economy and the excess of goods is exported. Sometimes we export goods, sometimes we import goods. When export is higher than the import, it is favorable for our economy and there will be inflow of money to our economy. So what happens? We get net earnings. So when export is more than import, we get net earnings. So that net earnings from export is added to GDP, that is gross domestic product. Gross domestic product is nothing but the total value of goods and services produced in an economy in a particular year. So in a particular country, in a particular year, we call as GDP, gross domestic product. So along with that, when net earnings is added, we get what is called as GNP. It means gross national product. So these workers, they contribute to the national income of the economy. Now, apart from this, you need to know what is potential labor force. Potential labor force. Now, all these workers who contribute to the national income, we call them as workers. Some people are there who do not work at all. Now, when they are not willing to work, though they are able to work, but they are not willing to work, even if a job is given, we call them as voluntarily unemployed. So, voluntarily unemployed people do not belong to this potential labor force. At the same time, even children below 15 years of age do not belong to this potential labor force. And above 60, that is after retirement, above 60, those people also do not belong to potential labor force. So potential labor force is otherwise total population. So the population of an economy or population of the country minus voluntarily unemployed people voluntarily unemployed minus children below 15 minus people aged above 60. Other than this, when you minus all this from total population, we get the workforce. And those people are called as workers and they belong to the potential labor force. Now, there are some cases where women work. They work at home from morning till night. They go collect fuel, wood, they go to the market, they cook at home. So even they work, but we cannot call them as workers because they do not contribute to the national income. Why do people work? So people choose their own career. Why do they work? So let us know the reason why people work. People work to earn a living. So without working, can they get an income? They don't get. How can they have a peaceful life? They won't. So people work to earn a living. They work for satisfaction and reward. And apart from all this, they want to be independent. They don't want to depend on anyone or they don't like to borrow money from others. So, when you want to be independent, you would like to continue your work. So, for being independent and for their own status and prestige, to lead a very comfortable and happy life. So, for all such reasons, people work. Let us have a quick glance on the types of workers. So you can see here different types of workers. The first one here, he does his own business. So we can say that he is self-employed who is doing his own business. So he is self-employed. So whatever profit he earns, that goes for him. And the next picture here, she is a teacher. So she is employed by an employer and she is paid for the service that she renders. So here you can say that she is a salaried person. So salaried person or a salaried worker. And here a doctor, if he has his own clinic, then we can say that he is doing service on his own and he comes under self-employed. But at the same time, if he is going to work in a government hospital and if he is paid for his service, then he comes under salaried worker. And this is a picture showing the workers on construction site and they come under casual workers. And here is a regular salaried person. Regular salaried worker. So in short, if I'm going to classify types of workers, I can classify into two broad ones. One is self-employed, who is doing his own business. Even a lawyer who is practicing law on his own, he is also a self-employed. A person who is doing his own business, who has a shop, he is also self-employed. Or a tailor who takes care of his own shop, stitching shirts, then he is also self-employed. So they all come under self-employed. And we have the other category, hired workers. So self-employed workers, they'll not hire. They'll hire for helping them, but the owners are not hired. Here, the other category is hired workers. It means the employer would hire other workers. So these hired workers are of two types. So again, it is classified into two: salaried workers. These are regular. So they are regular salaried workers, and the other one are casual workers or even contract workers. So types of workers, two types of workers are there: self-employed and hired workers. Hired workers are again classified into regular salaried workers, and casual workers or contract workers. So these casual workers, they are either paid wages, daily wages or weekly wages. These people are either paid as daily or weekly, but they are paid wages. Whereas salaried workers, they are paid permanent salary. So they get their income on a permanent basis. We can find out the worker population ratio by this formula: number of workers, that is number of employed persons, divided by total population into 100. Divide the number of employed persons by total population into 100, we get what is called as worker population ratio. So from this we can know how many workers are there in the economy, the ratio of workers to the total population. This worker population ratio is used for analyzing the employment situation in the economy. So from this we can know the proportion of employed workers in an economy. So let me give you an example. Suppose a number of employed persons in a rural area. Let us take the region, a rural area. So number of employed persons in the rural area is 40 crores, and the total population in that area is 70 crores. It means 30 crores people are unemployed. So 40 crores of people are employed, 70 crores is the total population. We need to multiply this by 100. So when we calculate this, you get 400 by 7. 7 5s are 35. So carry a 5. 7 7s are 49. Point and 1, so 57.1. So around 57.1 is the worker population ratio if at all 40 crores of people are employed out of 70 crores population. So we can know 57.1 percentage of people are employed in that particular region. So you can know the employment situation from this worker population ratio. Chart 7.1 tells you the distribution of employment by gender. So male workers and female workers. So when you compare both pie diagrams, you can come to a conclusion that more than 50% of the workforce are engaged in self-employment. So you can see here in male workers, 51% of male workforce are engaged in self-employment, and here more than 50%, that is 56% of the female workforce are engaged in self-employment. And you can see here in female why it is more, because you know very well that they work in their own fields, and do small job. So 56% of the female workforce are engaged in self-employment. And next, when you see the regular salaried job, so regular salaried employees in male, it is 20%, whereas in female, it is 13%. We know very well these men, they are highly literate and they have the skill, knowledge. So that is why the percentage of workforce by male is more than the female workers who are engaged in regular salary job. So these people are skilled, they are literate, and they also have knowledge than female. That is why more percentage are engaged in regular salary jobs. And the next one shows you the casual wage laborers. So male workers, 29% of the male workers are engaged in casual wage work, like those who are engaged in construction work. Whereas in female, it is 31. So it shows very well female are percentage is more than the male. So on the whole, when you compare, you can see the majority of workforce are self-employed, and then next comes the casual workers, and the last one with less percentage is the regular salaried employees. Now let us see in 7.2 the distribution of employment by region. So by region, it means urban workforce and rural workforce. So by region, when you just compare, you can know that the self-employed workforce, rural workforce is more in rural areas than in urban areas. So you can see 56% of the rural workforce are engaged in self-employment, whereas in urban it is 43%. And the next is the 42% of workforce engaged in regular salary jobs. So urban contribution. So urban workers are engaged in salaried job than the rural workers. Rural workers, it is only 9%. You know very well in urban areas there are more industries. So what happens? There is increased job opportunities. And that's the reason that in urban areas, 42% of the people are engaged in regular salary job. Whereas in rural areas, they don't have much job opportunities and very few percentage, only 9% are engaged in regular salary job. The next is the casual wage laborers. So coming to the casual wage laborers, you can know very well the rural workforce who are engaged as casual wage laborers is 35%, whereas in urban it is only 15%. So there is increase in rural workforce who are engaged in casual wage work. So on the whole, when you see in urban, you can see 43% are engaged in self-employed work, 42 in regular salaried jobs, and only 15 here in casual work. Whereas in rural, the salaried job is too less compared to the casual work and the self-employed jobs. Now, table 7.1 tells you the distribution of workforce by industry. So, this is the data 2017-18. Now, the industrial category is given here in the first column with the primary sector. So, there are three types of sectors: primary, secondary, and tertiary. Tertiary sector is otherwise called as service sector. Primary sector we call it as agriculture sector, and secondary sector we call as industrial sector. Now the first one, let me first tell you what is primary sector. So primary sector, when people are engaged in this sector, they exploit the natural resources and they work on it. Then we call it as primary sector. Example, agriculture, and then mining, fishing, quarrying. All this comes under primary sector because the workers involved in primary sector, they exploit the natural resources and they do such job. So when that is the case, when they do mining or fishing or quarrying or agriculture, they use all the natural resources. Whereas secondary sector is the sector where there is transformation taking place. It means, take for example, the raw materials which they receive from agriculture, the goods, the final good of agriculture becomes the raw material of the secondary sector. This raw material is transformed into finished good. So when the transformation takes place, we call it as secondary sector. So industry comes under secondary sector, manufacturing, electricity, gas, water, construction, all this comes under secondary sector. And then comes the service sector, tertiary or the service sector. So from the word service, you can understand service like transport, education, banking, etc. So all this comes under tertiary sector. Now let us see the comparative study given here in urban and rural areas, that is by region and by gender. So by gender and by region. So let us first compare by region. So we can see here 59% of the workforce in rural area, they depend on primary sector. But just say in urban areas, it is too less. Only 6.6% of the workforce depend on primary sector. Because in rural areas, there are many farmlands and people depend on agriculture. And that is why 59.8% of rural workforce depend on primary sector. Now, the next one is the secondary sector or the industrial sector. We know very well in urban areas there are many industries. Even the government sets up many industries in urban areas. So you can see the difference. 34.3% of the workforce depend on secondary sector, and in rural areas it is only 20.4. Then coming to tertiary sector. Tertiary sector, 59% of workforce depend on tertiary sector in urban areas, whereas in rural areas it is only 19.8, because you have many banking facilities in urban areas, then transport linkage. So everything is there in urban areas, and that is why 59.1% depend on tertiary sector. The more they depend on tertiary sector, there is more development taking place in the economy. The next one is by gender. So when we compare male and female, you can see in primary sector, 57.1 percentage of female workforce depend on primary sector, whereas whereas the male workforce it is only 40.7. And coming to this secondary sector, it is 26.5 percentage of male workforce depend on secondary sector, whereas the female workforce it is only 17.7 percentage depend on secondary sector. It means they are engaged more in agricultural sector. Female workforce are engaged more in agricultural sector, and then the tertiary sector is the next one, and in secondary sector it is only 17.7 percentage. Whereas when you see the male workforce in primary sector it is 40.7 and tertiary sector it is 32.8, and same as female it is less in secondary sector. But comparatively, you can see in secondary sector and tertiary sector, male workforce are engaged more in these two sectors than the female workforce. And when you see the total workforce, you can see 44.6 percentage are engaged in primary sector, and secondary workforce it is secondary sector it is 24.4 percentage, and tertiary sector it is 31 percentage of people.